If you've got old faded pontoons with water lines and you don't want to do all the work of polishing, this is the video for you. We're going to take you through cleaning those pontoons up with an acid wash or aluminum brightener solution. We'll show you the steps along the way to get your pontoons looking nicer again. In this video, I'm using Purple Power Aluminum Brightener from Blaine's Farm and Fleet. There's lots of other aluminum brighteners that'll work just fine, but I've found that this gives me the results I'm after. If you've got a lot of buildup or scale, you might start with a product like muriatic acid that's going to help break down the scale first. The pontoons I'm cleaning up today really just have a water line, need a little freshening up. We're going to run our Purple Power through a garden pump sprayer, just a simple one. Hand pump works just fine. I always make sure to do this outside on pavement because the chemicals we're using are pretty powerful, and anything underneath it, if you're on grass, is probably going to die. And I do this on my center lift trailer. If you're doing it on a bunk trailer, just be sure to rinse everything really well. I always start this project by just power washing the pontoon, just to remove anything that's on there that's going to come off nice and easy. For my first treatment, I dilute my solution about 25% water, 75% aluminum brightener. After the first treatment, we can always adjust that mixture based on how things are looking. I was always taught to wear gloves, a mask, and glasses whenever messing with this stuff. It's pretty powerful. Let's not take any chances. Once I'm all mixed up, I'm going to pump up my sprayer to prime it, and we're ready to apply. I always start in the backs of the pontoons on the inside. I'm not going to do the full inside, but I do the last 3 or 4 feet so it looks nice and uniform from behind. This is also a good place to start if it's your first time applying aluminum brightener. That way you can see how it looks with your application. And it's a good place to practice before moving to the outsides of the pontoons. You'll notice as I move to the back of the pontoon that I'm always applying from the bottom going up on the pontoon. I'm going to do this on the outsides as well. This keeps it from streaking. So if I apply from the top down, we're going to see a lot more streaks. Applying from the bottom up, side to side, in smaller areas. We're not going to try to do the whole pontoon at once. That's the way that I've found works best for me. Once I've applied all the way to the top, I'm going to go ahead and let it sit. You can see I jump over to the other side. We're going to let it sit about 1 minute. I don't like to let it sit too long. We definitely don't want it to dry, but we're going to let it work. You can see it's starting to break down that water line a little bit there. It'll sort of change to almost a white foamy look. That's how I know it's working. After letting it sit for about a minute or so, I'm going to go ahead and power wash what I've already treated off. And you'll see it's not perfect yet. This may never get perfect compared to polishing, but it's going to make it look a lot better when we're done. After I've rinsed it, I'm going to do a second and final application. You might have to do 3 applications, just depends on how much scale you have, how bad your water lines are. I let it sit and do its thing again, and if I have stubborn spots, I can hit them with a little bit more of the aluminum brightener, and it's usually going to help quite a bit just to eat it away, get rid of it if you got that hard water line or a little bit of scale buildup. Then, I always on my last application, I just take a microfiber cloth, not something abrasive, I don't want to scratch them up, and I'm going to go ahead and do circular motions, and this really helps uniform the finish and gets off any of those stubborn spots too. After giving it a wipe down, I'm going to give it another power wash, and that basically is going to reveal what the end finish is going to look like. I had to cut off some brackets on this pontoon, so that's why you're seeing that different color on the aluminum on the back. Over time, those marks will oxidize and blend in. I'm going to power wash the side of the pontoon, and it's time to get started with our application there. On the sides of the pontoons, I'm going to work in 4 to 6 foot sections. A lot of times I'll use the chambers or welds as my guide, but I'm just going to go side to side, not trying to do the whole length of the pontoon at a time. We're just going to work back and forth, working our way from the bottom to the top. Obviously this pontoon is stripped down. We're in the middle of restoring it. But if you're working on your pontoon and it's got the sides and the deck trim on, you are going to want to use something to protect it from this acid. The deck trim, your flooring, your railings, they can all be discolored and affected by the aluminum brightener. In those cases, you can dial back your pressure and just be a little more careful when you get to the tops of the pontoons. I go ahead and jump over to the other pontoon and let this sit about a minute. I let that aluminum brightener work on the water line, starting to break it down. You can see it doing its sort of white foamy look. And you're going to start to get a look at what that aluminum brightener is going to do and how it's going to transition the color of these pontoons from that faded aluminum more to that bright, almost whitish look. I'm going to get that coat washed off, and then I'll move forward towards the front of the pontoon. And it's normal to still have a little bit of a water line where there was more of a buildup. We'll get that, or most of it, with the second coat. Moving forward, I'm going to work on the front half of the pontoon, not doing the nose cone yet. Sometimes that's a little bit more complicated, takes a little bit more care. So we're just going to work the next straight section of the pontoon. Same thing, applying bottom to top, going back and forth. And I do overlap just a little bit where I've already treated. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to change the color. You'll never know, but I do want to overlap that just a little bit with the brightener. And if you're not comfortable jumping from side to side while you let that brightener sit, just work one section, one side at a time. This is something to consider. I never want to run out of my solution in the middle of a treatment, so I'm going to go ahead and just top off, trying to keep it roughly 25% water, 75% brightener. I give it another rinse, and you're going to start to see how things are blending together, looking a lot cleaner already. In this video, I'm only showing you the starboard side, but I'm doing the exact same thing on the port side as well. I'm applying to the nose cone now. I'm just going to hit everything I can under the splash fins on top. We're going to do the best we can just to make a nice uniform bottom to top coat of the brightener again. To keep it looking clean and uniform from the front, I work back a few feet on the nose cones. In just a matter of maybe a half hour, I've already got my first application done. You can see we've still got some water line, but we're getting the color we want overall. If you've got a heavy water line like this, you might stick with that 25-75 ratio. You might mix it a little stronger, or if your pontoons are already looking pretty clean, you might go to a 50-50 mixture just to apply that second coat to make sure everything's nice and uniform. But I apply it the same way I did the first time. And then I'm going to go back over that whole section with my microfiber cloth. That gives me a chance again to work out any of those stubborn spots, but I really like it for giving it a uniform finish. And I feel like using the cloth on the last treatment is the best way for me to keep it from streaking. I'll let it sit on there about a minute again, just like the first time. And then I'll go ahead and power wash it off, and we'll move forward to the next chamber. This is going to give you a good idea of what this aluminum brightener can do for removing that water line, the little bit of scuzz that builds up, and just that faded old oxidized aluminum. I repeat those same steps with applying the aluminum brightener and then giving it a wipe down with the microfiber cloth on that front chamber of the pontoon, and then I'll work my way to the nose cone as well. I'm going to give it one last rinse with the power washer, and I'm going to make sure that I rinse all of the pontoons, both sides, really, really well. I'm going to get off any of that solution that might still be on there. And when I'm all finished, I'm going to rinse the drive really well too. Rinse off that concrete that might discolor your concrete if you're not careful. And here's a look at that port side too. Everything cleaned up really, really well with this application. Here's one last look at what we started with and the finished product. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and check out our discounts in the description below.